Hello and welcome to the Enterprise Talk Conversation Series, a peer knowledge resource by the CXOs for the CXOs. Now to our host, Kanika Goswami.
Hi, we welcome you to our podcast On Stage with Enterprise Thought Leaders. My name is Kanika Goswami and I'm the managing editor of Marketing Technology Publications. We have engaging conversations with global thought leaders and industry experts, reaching over 1.3 million business leaders worldwide. Cella by Randstad Digital's 15th Annual Cella Intelligence Report looks into the state of the in-house marketing and creative operations, incorporating the survey responses of hundreds of creative and marketing professionals across 25 industries. More than 60% of these professionals view AI as a productivity enhancer, but only 5% report strong proficiency in its use. Today, we speak with Nickole Brown. She's a senior consultant with Cella to know more about the personalization, cross-channel engagement, and customer expectations, even as organizations that fail to evolve beyond execution risk falling behind. Nicole, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Kanika. I'm so happy to be here.
Pleasure. So a little bit about Nicole before we start. Cella by Randstad Digital's consultant Nickole Brown has 2 decades of creative operations, production, and marketing experiences to share. She's passionate about bringing clarity to creative spaces and focuses on utilizing the voice of the customer, data, and mechanisms to tell the story of a creative organization. Nicole's skills include being an effective leader and a partner who enjoys collaborating to uncover the unique process improvement opportunities, success metrics, and team structure that will capture an organization's potential. Once again, welcome to the podcast, Nicole. Before we start with the questions, would you like to say something about the report that's based on your own observations?
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to kind of exploring that more in here. But I think one of the things we see in the report is really just a lack of rigor around operational foundation that is going to be required to use all of these tools like AI and automation that we're so excited about. So I'm really excited to have this opportunity to dive into this and talk about and make sure everyone is aware that we are very excited. I think all of us maybe slightly fearful of what's coming, but either way, we have to be prepared for this. And there is some kind of house cleaning, if you will, that has to happen in order to use these tools.
So great. So my first question is, do you think AI is being leveraged as much as it's possible? If not, what do you see as a bottlenecks to this leverage?
Yeah, I love that question. Kanika, and I think the key word there is possible, right? So in terms of what AI is capable of, absolutely not. We're not using it to its capabilities yet, right? So in our creative intelligence report, only 2% of respondents said they are exploring AI for in-market data analysis. Only 8% are exploring it for operational data analysis, and only 25% are exploring it for personalization. Right there, that starts to tell us we aren't even thinking about using this to its maximum capabilities. And this is where people are most desperately needing solutions, right? So that is still pretty complex. But now if we say, are we leveraging it as much as possible in terms of what teams can realistically manage or are prepared to manage, then the answer might be yes. And I say that we have 63% of respondents saying that they are looking to explore it for productivity. Why? Because bandwidth is an issue for everyone. We're constantly being told to do more with less, right? So what happens when we do more with less? Usually strategy and innovation go to the wayside. And that's what we're seeing in this report. Only 5% of the respondents that we surveyed have strong AI knowledge in a specific area. So that doesn't bode well for our possibility of using it, right? 53% say adoption and change management are their biggest technology challenges. And we're still seeing that people think change management is a nice to have. And that's absolutely not true. We all know, right, that this is the downfall of adoption and new technology. So all of those things are very disruptive to productivity, right? So I think we're still not focusing on what we know to be true. I don't think there is anybody who will say change management is not necessary, right? So I think, we're still only seeing 38% are seeing an investment in AI at a creative department level, and only 61% at a corporate level. So no, we're not using it to the best of the tools capabilities, but maybe we are in terms of what the teams can actually bring on board. So I think I really think the big issue here stems from a lack of strategy. How do we intend to use AI for what purpose? So those really, senior leadership level strategic guidance to the organization. But then that also, we're also talking about creating the space and the resources to bring in this new technology. So I think, it's a little tough, I think, right now for teams to be bringing this technology into the space with any kind of success.
So you do think that once it is not considered merely nice to have and starts becoming an integral part of the thought process for planning, then things are going to get better?
I hope so. Yeah, I think that's a step in the right direction.
So for the most effective use of AI, data needs to be the primary focus. Do you think companies are able to ensure a good data strategy, as in clean data, structured data, relevant data, unsiloed data, a whole lot of challenges that data faces on a daily basis to all enterprises? So, and that is not happening. What more do you think needs to be done by enterprises to be able to get there?
Well, I think, I personally am a big fan of data. And I've been talking about this for years that we have to be prepared. AI has to be fed, right? So we hear words like it's the fuel, it's the teacher, it's all of those things. And the issue is you're probably not going to be too successful if you're using benchmarks. It is very specific to your organization if you really want to see success with these tools. So, we're talking about, as you mentioned, needing high quality, relevant data in order to be useful. That is still a huge challenge for folks to get at that. So, we're seeing in this report, 58% of people identify ROI as the most challenging metric to capture and report on. Fair enough. ROI is tough to get, and it sometimes requires large surveys, et cetera, a significant investment, right? But I think what is very telling and concerning is that 48% of people see process and project performance to be a problem. And the reason that's concerning is when we talk about in-market performance data, we know that this data is coming from disparate systems. It's very hard to collect it. So one, you have the challenge of even knowing what to measure. But even when you do, it's hard to consolidate the data, right? It's very siloed. But for operational data, often that lives in a project management tool, much easier to get at. So what that's telling me is people are not sure what they should be measuring. They're not collecting the information in intake, right? Garbage in, garbage out, as they say. So there, even from an operational data perspective, which is, in my opinion, much easier to get at for most people, they're not even getting that, right? So I think there's a lot of challenges, and data not only gets siloed in tools, but it can be siloed because an organization, like an entire marketing department, is not speaking the same language when it comes to data. So that data can't flow. It can't be analyzed. So when we talk about in-house creative teams, if they have an operational data strategy and they're using words to define it and meanings, if that's not the same throughout the entire marketing or even the larger org, it won't be used. It won't flow. It won't connect. It's isolated, right? And we don't want that. So there are a lot of challenges. And we see actually in the report that the top challenges to implementing and analyzing, maximizing analytics is in-house expertise. So on the other side, orgs don't even have the skill set to get this moving, right? So big challenges when we talk about actually using data in AI. So I think, we need to start prioritizing data as a business critical asset, right? This is again, not a nice to have. And this issue goes beyond AI. We're also seeing in our report, 28% of in-house creative teams are conducting regular retrospectives, or use the same percentage using feedback to update their briefs. So this goes beyond AI. People aren't even using their data or continuous improvement efforts, right? We're not even monitoring. So we're doing, and we're really focused on efficiency, but we're not so focused on effectiveness, right? So we're just doing things, we're not learning. Even without AI, we're not doing retrospectives. And you shouldn't really bother to do a retrospective if you don't intend to improve something, right? So we're not even seeing those practices happening. So I think this is even bigger than AI. This is about building a continuous improvement culture, that we're learning, that we're getting better. And AI is, of course, going to make that easier for us at some point, but we're not even doing the basics.
I get that. I hear you. So, what do you see as the best use of AI? Which business processes? Would you say marketing is the process in which AI can be the most impactful?
Well, let me say that I guess the best use case depends on the objectives you're trying to use, but I would say anywhere where you are enhancing human capabilities. Now, personally, I think AI is so exciting in the healthcare field, right? Where we can learn about our own health and, this has the potential to save lives. But in the marketing space specifically, I think it's incredibly exciting, right? Marketing is notoriously underfunded, under-resourced, right? And this is where we can change that narrative for ourselves. So I think the best use maybe isn't even what we should achieve. It's like, how can we start to use it, right? The best use case is what people will use and what will actually start to spread. So of course we see 80% of people in our survey, the number one tool they're using is Chat GPT, and that's great. It might be really basic and simple, but that's a great start, right? Moving into something like automating tasks. I don't think people realize, one, we all know automation is fantastic, right? Take away anything that can be automated from people and you make them happy. So you start to build confidence and you start to build interest. And, again, this is a big change management effort, right? When we do these. So start to think about, how are we approaching this as an org to get everybody excited about it? Automation's a good place to start, right? And this is a big efficiency win. And in some cases, effectiveness too, right? These repetitive tasks we know humans are not really great at, right? We don't have an interest and we're not great at it. We weren't designed for that. But then, as your whole org is taught on prompt engineering, you start to use automation, then we have to be working our way up to where we are, looking at supporting predictive analysis, et cetera, which is what we really want these tools for, right? But maybe it's a journey. It's a crawl, walk, run situation. And then I think, what's really exciting and what we see in our CIR is, number one, people are looking for AI to explore productivity, and that's 63% of people. I understand that feels like a reaction to the fact that we don't have enough resources. But they're also looking for concept development and to automate asset creation. So I think that's exciting. I do think we need to put a focus more on effectiveness as well, because we know in marketing, we're never looking to just solely look at efficiency. It has to be that balance with effectiveness, or what are we doing, right? So I hope to see that, we start thinking more about the effectiveness of AI, but, so many use cases, but I would say what is realistic and what can have the biggest impact the fastest, right? So and what I'm talking about here is, I guess, more of an evolutionary approach to a revolutionary. And I know AI is a revolution, but can we, revolutions are very jarring, right? Can we take an evolutionary approach when we're thinking about bringing this into our organizations? In some cases, yes. In some cases, no.
I get that, and thanks for such a balanced reply, because there is really no one answer to that kind of a question. So,
No, there isn't, but it's a great question. We all should be thinking about it.
yeah. Skills, despite so many certifications that are available, do you think there are requisite amount of AI skills available for the best use? And when you talk about change management, it would also be covering people skills that are lost to AI tools.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on that scenario?
So that's such a great question, and so listen. I would say that no, the skill set is not there, and I believe the that there's plenty of research out there to say that that's absolutely correct, right? That we see that as a area where demand is going to be great. There's not a lot of trained skills. And think about this, even if you're somebody who's very well trained in AI, do you also have specific subject matter expertise? Because you really need the two together, right? You're not simply looking for somebody who knows AI very well. It's who can also have that subject matter expertise, because when I'm a subject matter expert, AI is Chat GPT is a super useful tool for me. If you aren't a subject matter expert, how are you using those tools, right? So there could be different levels of how people are using the tool depending on their expertise. But, I would say practical application. So we can all take certification courses, but that's really theory. We need time to practice. We need time to fail. We need time to get better. And that is not something in marketing departments that we are really thinking about or have the luxury of. But again, it's not a luxury, right? It's a must have. So we saw in our report that 41% of people said they have that within their orgs, they have some AI knowledge. 5% said, again, I quoted this before, that they have specific or relevant AI knowledge. So I think 48% are looking to upskill their talent and 6% are looking to hire. I think that's smart. To hire number is so low because the truth is that talent isn't out there and it's in high demand. So you have to be incredibly competitive and it takes time. I think, the figure was 5 to 8 times longer to hire in that space. And that's significant. So I think my concern is that for those folks who are doing annual operating plan, and that's really the roadmap, how will we achieve, right, in the 1 year time, our strategic goals? They are looking at day-to-day work and they are planning capacity for that. But if you are also not balancing that with continuous improvement and innovation, you're really going to be in trouble, right? So to say, I have a group of designers who I need to be using these AI tools, you have to give them space to learn it and trial it and A/B test. And I think I'm not seeing enough people doing that, right? So your annual operating plan is not just the day to day. It is, how do I slow down and prioritize? And prioritization is a challenge still for folks in the marketing space. A very, very big challenge that comes back to a lack of strategy up front, right? It's pretty easy to prioritize when a clear message is coming down from leadership. This is what we focus on. So I think the annual planning, you have to show the organization, in order for us to innovate and do more with less, we have to have that space to do that, right? It takes a little bit of time and effort. So we slow down to speed up, right? So I think the skills is like, we really, really need to think about how we're going to upskill our talent in this space, because we all need these skills. It's not 2 or 3 people, it's all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I have not asked you that question, but it goes without saying that just having skilled resources would not be enough if the managing teams are not aware of what's happening there and how the tools work, right? So everybody will
Absolutely.
be upgrading for in terms of skills and certifications, or maybe even hiring people with those kind of skills directly.
Yeah.
But that comes at a cost. So there are those hurdles for you, right? And the ROI from the use of AI needs to be linked to some kind of benefit. What are you getting? What is the impact? So do you think there are adequate ways to measure the impact of AI tools on operations, especially marketing operations? If not, how do you think technology leaders can justify the investment? There's always a CFO sitting on the decision to ask, what am I getting in return? So in that case, in case you are not able to measure it in terms of financial impact or financial benefits, what other parameters can be used which will justify the onboarding, deployment, use, additional skills, onboarding skills, or adding skills to existing people, so that the deployment of the tool can be justified financially?
I love that question, and I want to challenge everybody on the call. I always say, in the absence of data, get data. I mean, there shouldn't be an absence. So you don't need AI to get data, right? For a business justification, you can manually track, right, for a couple weeks and get a rough estimate. It doesn't have to be perfect, and say, I think. I don't think we should expect leadership to support our investments or our ask for resources if we can't make a very strong case for it, because it forces us to validate what we're thinking is correct, right? So, this goes back to me again to that loss of focus on continuous improvement. If you're going to bring in an AI tool, there are certainly more ways to measure success than the efficiency you've gained for it or the savings, right? There is employee satisfaction, for example. If you automate some of my most basic tasks that are not value add in terms of my skill set is not adding value to do this task, that is huge, right? I'm less likely to leave. I'm less likely to be frustrated. I'm accomplishing the big goals that are set in front of me, and I feel better. So that's a great measure, employee satisfaction. But back to the, focusing on measuring the efficiency, again, understanding we're not seeing in our CIR that people are necessarily using new tools. They're still primarily looking at DAMs and project management tools. These tools have been around for a long time, but now these tools are AI enabled. So the investment seems better. If you don't have, let's say you don't have a project management tool or a DAM, you can you don't even have to survey. You can ask a group of people, marketing, to manually track, like give them some task, manually track for 2 weeks how much time you're spending in these spaces, right? This is not a perfect science, but you can start to estimate this team is spending X amount of time, multiply that times 50 people, multiply that over 1 year and 3 years, right? And then you can say, this is what we're thinking the cost savings is, the time savings, right? And or if you have these tools and they now have new AI capabilities, you can say, hey, there's 3 functionality have been added. Let's just measure that. So you can make a case. It isn't actually impossible, and we should be challenging ourselves to do so. This is an exercise worth doing, right? Because also, if you can't show leadership, when we spend X amount of time implementing and change managing, this is what we get, right? You have to build that case for change overall and innovation and strategy overall. And this is how you do it. This is business, right? And a business case is a great exercise. So I challenge everyone to try to get the data and try to quantify the ROI, as well as looking at more qualitative data, right? So maybe it's a customer satisfaction. So I think we can get at the data. I think by just throwing our hands up and saying, I can't, we may not have the time, but this is really important.
That is right. And that should be a continuous process just alongside the use of the tool. So I'm sure it's finally about cost. How much manpower have we saved? How much of cost optimization have we done? How much revenue growth has been achieved after the tools have been deployed? I'm sure there's a link to it.
Absolutely.
So that brings me to the end of the questions that I had for you, Nicole, and very, very insightful. So grateful for you to have taken it all with so much of data and solid information to share with our viewers and audiences. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much for being with us. Please do follow us on social media for regular updates and new content.